On September 9, 1966, Wallace Sheffy became Umapati Das, one of the first 11 American disciples to be initiated by Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. Wanting to be of service to his spiritual master, Umapati went to Srila Prabhupada and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Srila Prabhupada said, "You can take notes in my classes." Umapati obediently responded and took careful notes whenever Srila Prabhupada lectured. As a result, he developed a remarkable familiarity with Srila Prabhupada's teachings and could repeat them with unusual accuracy, almost as if Srila Prabhupada himself were speaking. In 1972, Umapati appeared on NBC TV's Challenge My Sermon to represent the emerging Krishna consciousness movement in America. His performance on that show is an impressive reminder of the duty of a disciple to transmit the teachings of his spiritual master exactly as they have been given without any compromise.
Challenge My Sermon, a forum for young people to question traditional religious values. With this series, KNBC provides an opportunity for members of the clergy and youth of the community to explore different viewpoints. Taking part in today's dialogue is Sriman Umapati Das Adhikari of the Sri Sri Radha Krishna Temple of Los Angeles. Challenging him are young adults of various faiths. Vance Johnson from Mount Hollywood Congregational Church. Ernie Jaramillo from Bellarmine Jefferson High. Stephen Sass from the University of Judaism. And Brad Curry from Hope Lutheran Church. Sriman Umapati's spiritual master, Prabhupada, is shown here. Prabhupada founded the Hare Krishna movement. Sriman Umapati is one of his disciples. Prabhupada came to the Western world to encourage and instruct people in chanting God's name. To facilitate this, he introduced the Mahamantra, the well-known Hare Krishna chant, as the particular process for this age according to leading authorities in God consciousness. This chanting of God's names has been taken up by thousands of young Americans. Persons in many other nations also are adopting the chant. Festivals like this one are held throughout the year and throughout the world by devotees of Prabhupada to carry on his work. The carts seen here were made by San Francisco members of the Hare Krishna movement for the Rath Yatra festival held each year in that city. Festivals are an integral function of the Hare Krishna movement as they are meant to advertise the glories of God. The Hare Krishna movement continues to expand in the Western world. Krishna groups chant the spiritual call for the Lord in the streets. The chanting is like the cry of a child for its mother. The Madhara helps the devotee find grace, and the Lord reveals himself to that devotee who chants his mantra sincerely. Now here to give his sermon and to answer the challenges of our guests is Sriman Umapati Das Adhikari.
So this process of Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna, is a very old process. It's not something that has just been invented. Actually, it's the oldest teaching known to mankind. But at the same time, it's a very scientific teaching. So when we say scientific, it's a scientific way of becoming God conscious, of knowing what is God. Krishna in the Sanskrit language is a name for God. But when we say a science, we mean in contrast to what is passing off as science now in our society. Because now our educators, our scientists, our government leaders, everybody is teaching that life is a product of dead matter, that we are simply combinations of chemicals picked up, combined together, somehow producing life. But this is actually a very illogical conclusion, because any child can see, I am alive because my parents were alive. My parents are alive because their parents were alive, and so on. Actually, no one has ever seen life come out of dead matter. No one has any experience of such a thing. But these scientists and these educators, simply by their mental concoction, simply by their guesswork, are posing as authorities and misleading the people into so much suffering. So the first item of spiritual knowledge, which is real knowledge, the first thing we have to understand is, I am not this body. I am not matter. I am not a product of these material elements. Then what am I? I am pure spirit soul. So Krishna consciousness is starting from this platform. What is spirit soul then? If I'm not a combination of chemicals, if I'm not $1 worth of chemicals, then what am I? So we turn to authority because everybody listens to authority. Now everybody in our country is listening to this perverted authority of our scientists and educators. And in Krishna consciousness, we're turning to the authority of the ancient Vedic scriptures. Actually, this is not an Indian religion, and it's not an Indian teaching. Although it's associated with India, and it's practiced with India, Krishna consciousness is the eternal nature of every living entity. God can be known by so many names: Allah, Jehovah, Buddha, Jesus, also Krishna. Krishna in the Sanskrit language means the all-attractive, the most beautiful. So who can deny that this means God? If you speak of the one who is most beautiful, that can only be God. So we say, Krishna, you may call God any of the names that are coming from your scriptures. It's not our policy to tell the Christians, do not be Christian, or to tell the Jews, do not be Jews. But simply we say that the test of your religion, whatever it is how much have you learned to love God? If you're going to church but you're not learning to love God, then you're wasting your time. Krishna consciousness means love of God, nothing else. Now, in ancient ages, there are very many ways that people would try to get in contact with God. Sometimes they would spend long hours meditating, many years and years meditating, or performing huge sacrifices. But according to the scriptures, the ancient Vedic scriptures, in this present age, the recommended process is chanting the names of God. Because God is absolute. Therefore, when you chant His name, you can come in contact with Him. And we see people chant Hare Krishna. They never get tired of it. People chant it year in, year out. No one gets tired of chanting Hare Krishna or any name of God. Of course, you cannot make up your own name of God. You cannot just chant Charlie or Sam or something like that. But whatever your scriptures are teaching you, whatever your religion is, chant this name of God constantly. If you don't have a name of God, chant Hare Krishna. So, about 500 years ago in India, Lord Caitanya, he said that this was the time to bring this chanting of Hare Krishna into the streets, as it was predicted in the scriptures. He was teaching, chant Hare Krishna, your life will be sublime. So therefore, we are also teaching the same thing, in line with the scriptures. We're inviting everybody, chant the name of God wherever you go. Understand, God is a person. God is not simply an abstract force. He's not simply something that you try and read in between the lines. Actually, we have these scriptures to give us so much information of God. It is not that you have to interpret or give esoteric meanings or hidden meanings to the scriptures. Scriptures are not here to cheat you, but the scriptures are here to reveal God. Therefore, one who wants to study scriptures must take the scriptures at face value. And then the purport of the scriptures is immediately revealed. But any religious teachings that are simply delving into secret hidden meanings, all they can do is confuse you. Along with our scientists, our educators, our government leaders. Now there are so many cheaters masquerading under the name of scientists, under the name of clergymen, under the name of government leader, all misleading the people. So this Krishna consciousness is very much needed in our modern society. Because Krishna consciousness means love of God. This is the one thing that's lacking. We have so many things now. We have buses, we have airplanes, we have computers, we have this and that, we have television cameras, all these things. The one thing that's missing is God. That's what you don't have to give up your life. You don't have to go and sit and look at a wall for 9 years or do any of these things. Simply, in whatever you're doing, always bring God in whatever you're doing. God consciousness. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. So we are going out on the street, following the orders of the scriptures, chanting this Hare Krishna everywhere we go, inviting everybody to join us, have a little taste of God consciousness, try to understand what is God. Now, there's so much talk about loving your fellow man. It's a very big subject today. But if you don't have some love of God, there's no possibility of loving your fellow man. The one who loves God, one who is Krishna conscious, he is a friend to every living entity. One cannot love God and at the same time be cruel and mean to other living entities, not even the poor animals. But one who is really a devotee of God, he has compassion toward every living creature. He must be completely harmless. Therefore, in our movement also, we are practicing what is the highest welfare work on every level. We are not harming any living creature. That's the negative part. And the positive part is that we're doing everything we can to bring all living entities back to God consciousness so they can be freed from all miseries coming from this material world. Actually, this material world is not our home, and we don't belong here. And it is the mission of every human being to reach the perfection of his human life by chanting the names of God and becoming God conscious, and by casting aside all the useless things that he has learned in so many wasted years in schools and colleges. So before we go any further, does anybody have any questions or anything you'd like to say? Some of our guests?
Well, you said that you can call God by many names. Yet how do you relate to the person, say, of Jesus Christ, of another spiritual leader?
Jesus Christ said that he was the Son of God. So therefore, we also accept this. Jesus said, in the Bible, Jesus said, I am the Son. And Krishna said, I'm the Father. So there isn't any contradiction. Jesus said, worship God. Krishna said, worship me. So there's no contradiction between Christianity and Krishna consciousness, because both are directed toward love of God. If by your practice of Christianity you are learning to love God, then that is true Christianity. If by your practice of Christianity you simply go to church on Sunday and do all nonsense the rest of the week, then your Christianity is worthless.
You said in your talk that nobody's witnessed life from death. Well, what about in our religion, the Christian religion? Jesus Christ rose from the dead, so...
But he was already alive. He was already alive, then he was crucified and rose back, which showed that he couldn't be killed. Because he was on a spiritual platform, he couldn't be killed, because the soul cannot be killed. The body is killed, the soul is never killed. We can even see example. At this one time, all of us were little babies, and we had little baby bodies. Now we have adult bodies. These baby bodies are gone, completely vanished, but we're still alive. Because the body can die, but the soul does not die. This we have experience of, even in our lifetime. But what no one has any experience of is something dead like this rug coming to life. No one has ever seen that. Wherever there is life, there was life before injecting the life. A dead mother and father cannot produce a child. They must be alive.
Okay, you said that we don't belong here on earth. Now, how were we put here, or why were we put here, or where do we belong?
All right, because love of God has to be voluntary. If it's not voluntary, it's not love. If I'm forcing you to do what I say, if I'm forcing you to be affectionate, there's no question of love. Therefore, every living being has a certain amount of free will. Those who choose to misuse their free will come into this material world where it is possible to forget God. In the spiritual world, no one can forget God. That is the world for those who want to always remember God. And in that world, there is no death, because everybody is eternal. Everything everyone does is eternal. But our perverted desires have brought us down into this plane of living, into this universe, into this world, where there's nothing but suffering. Actually, even when we think we're enjoying in this world, there is no enjoyment here, because the only enjoyable thing is God or Krishna. Enjoyment in this world is compared to when it's very cold out. You might put on a very warm coat, and you think, oh, this is so nice, this coat feels so good. But actually, all you're doing is pushing away the suffering. So any pleasure in this world is like that. All you're doing is pushing away your suffering. But the platform of real positive pleasure is the platform of love of God. And when one has this kind of knowledge, the material pleasures are no longer interesting.
If you do have spiritual beliefs, then tell me this: why, if you don't believe in material things, then why are you dressed this way? Why aren't you dressed like us, or why aren't we dressed like you?
Okay, fine.
Why?
Let me define what is material, what is spiritual. Material means forgetfulness of God. Spiritual means remembrance of God. Spiritual does not mean void or absence of variety or absence of action. But spiritual means everything is utilized in remembrance of God. And material means everything is utilized in forgetfulness of God. Just like if you're running around chasing after every girl you see, smoking, drinking, doing all kinds of things like that, you're not doing anything for God. You're doing everything in forgetfulness of God.
But God drank. God did drink. God drank wine.
God can do a lot of things. You see, God can do a lot of
His children
things.
should be able to do those too.
If it's done according to the formulas given in the scriptures. But of course, in our group, we never touch alcohol. Now, the Christians and the Jews are permitted according to their scriptures. This way, if the taking of wine is done according to the scriptures, it's done in remembrance of God. That way it's permitted, just like sex. Every religion permits sex in marriage, and it can be done in remembrance of God. But every religion forbids sex outside of marriage, because it's done against the codes of God, because God is a person. And there are ways that you can get in contact with him and ways in which you will lose contact with him. And it's all done according to our own desire. We have to purify our desire. We are dressing this way. Of course, you don't have to wear robes or shave your head to love Krishna. That is not the criterion.
Why is it needed? Why do you do that?
We do it because it is recommended in the scriptures as a kind of meditation. So that every time we look at what we're wearing or we feel our shaved heads, we're reminded about what we're doing. But we also have people in our group with long hair and who wear street clothes. That's not forbidden in our group. The idea is that everything you do should make you remember God, and it should all be done according to the directions of scriptures. Even all these so-called spiritual masters coming over here from India saying, I'm God, or I have a new religion, they cannot be accepted either. Because the spiritual master, the spiritual teacher, he must not teach outside of the scriptures. If you want the consciousness that is provided for in the scriptures, if you want the consciousness that is described in scriptures, then you must follow the instructions in the scriptures to arrive at that state of knowledge. Therefore, the real spiritual master will always say, I am not God, I am the servant of God. I will show you how to be the servant of God according to scriptures. So in Krishna consciousness, we are very fortunate that we have all come under the shelter of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, our spiritual master, who has all the qualifications of a spiritual master according to the scriptural injunctions. So nothing is left up to chance. He is not claiming to be God, but he has simply come here to show us how to serve God in accordance with the scriptures, not making up any new teachings. Only God can originate a religion. No man can.
And yet isn't it possible for someone, we'll say for God to come in another guise, or to...
Oh, yes, yes. Actually, although the Christians say that the Son of God has appeared and the Father never has, we say that God has appeared on earth many times, looking many different ways, all mentioned in our scriptures. Krishna is the original form of God. God can appear looking so many different ways because He's all-powerful. He's unlimited. Nobody can say God cannot come here. He's unlimited. He can do anything. So therefore, He has appeared so many ways. Those who have studied the Vedic scriptures, they know about Lord Ramachandra, Lord Buddha, so many, Lord Nrsimha, all God Himself appearing, looking in different ways. But the original feature of God, according to the scriptures, is the feature known as Krishna, the beautiful young man. Just as it was at the beginning of the show, I think they showed some pictures of Krishna. You see?
Okay, in your talk you said we're supposed to chant Krishna or God, you know, and when we're walking the streets or anything. Well, you know, some people, you know, say, what's this guy doing, you know, chanting Krishna and everything. They just walk away, you know. So, well, you could do it, but, you know, what's the use when nobody will follow you? It's just a couple of people, but...
If you can save just one person, you've done a great thing. First of all, you have to get your own self started on this path of back to Godhead. And then you can transmit. So what if people think you're crazy? You're a Christian. Look what they did to Jesus. Look what they said about Jesus. But He never stopped because not enough people would follow Him. He never stopped. In fact, He encouraged all of His disciples, even if people revile you, even if people say bad things about you, still you continue and you'll be blessed. Therefore, we cannot worry as long as we know that we are strictly following scriptural injunctions and that we are completely blameless. A devotee of God must be blameless on every level. Then if people think we're crazy, what can we do? Actually, one who is not trying to love God, he is crazy, because he does not know what is the benefit of human life. So the one who is not loving God, and the one who is making fun of those who love God, that person is crazy, because he doesn't know what is his human life.
Well, there are a lot of things that, that I'd like to ask. I understand that you don't eat meat, for example, that the eating of meat is in conjunction with, say, warfare. Could you talk about that?
Sure. Of course, we only eat according to scriptural injunction. And we only eat what can be first offered as a sacrifice to Krishna or to the Lord. So we only eat what is recommended in scriptures. Now, it is recommended not to serve meat, not to eat meat. And because we are serving God in this way, also we become harmless and friendly to all living creatures. Our main goal is to be devotees of God. But when you are a devotee of Krishna, all good things will follow. Just like we're not a vegetarian movement, or we're not a peace movement, but by being God conscious, automatically vegetarianism, peacefulness is automatically there. Because when you come in touch with God, all good qualities will come. Therefore, we are harmless toward every living entity because of our service to God. That has made us a friend to living entities, not an enemy. No one has to fear a devotee of Krishna, not even an animal. And even in the Jewish and Christian religion where meat eating was permitted, it was permitted only as an act of sacrifice. It was never permitted by organized slaughterhouses, where the poor animals were just let in and butchered mercilessly without any connection with God.
That isn't true in the Jewish religion, though. When a ritual slaughterer goes to slaughter, he has special training in killing the animal in the most painless way. He pronounces a prayer. He has to have that training and that piety so that he can do that act. And he feels bad when he kills this animal. But before Noah, people did not eat meat. But God granted Noah that concession to eat the meat because he saw how man was. Okay? But this slaughterer does take into consideration the way, the animal feels before he kills him.
Right, the slaughterer feels bad, but in Krishna consciousness we don't do anything that makes us feel bad. Now also in the Bible, God gave man permission to eat meat because man had fallen into such a low state of sin that according to the Bible, the original plan of God was no meat. According to the Bible, in the first book of the Bible, when God created the world, he said, I give you the green things for food, and they shall be as meat for you. And later on, when man had fallen into a low depths of sin, he permitted meat eating. But Krishna consciousness is released from sin and living by God's original plan. Therefore, there is no necessity for eating meat.
But if I find God in my own religion, that means that I don't need Krishna, right?
God is Krishna. Of course, you cannot find God and not need Krishna.
No, but I'm saying if I worship him in my way...
But you must follow the injunctions to the letter. There can be no deviation. There can be no addition of your own thing to it.
But if I follow, let's say, my scripture the way it is, although Judaism is not according to the Bible, it's more Talmudic interpretation. But if I follow it, the way it is said, that means that my scripture is as valid as your scripture.
Oh yes, we do not say that one scripture is more valid. What we do say is that the Vedic scriptures give more information about the nature of God. Now the test of any religion is how much is your religion teaching you to love God. And the test of developing love of God is a decrease in material desire. In order to love God, you must first of all learn to control your senses. You must become the master of your senses. You must not be pulled here and there by your senses, pulled here by your sex desire, pulled here by your tongue, pulled here by your eyes, pulled here by your ears. That person who is living like that, he cannot claim to have love of God, because when you have love of God, you become the master of your senses. And we see in all religious teachings, the saints have perfectly controlled their senses and not been led here and there by foolish desires. Sure.
We don't go to God simply because it's some kind of ordered duty, necessarily. We go to God because we're all seeking pleasure. And we try to find pleasure through material means, but these are short-lived. There's an end to that pleasure. Whereas the pleasure that we are actually seeking is eternally found with God. It's actually a joyful thing, not something we go to with a glum expression on our face, but we actually enjoy this relationship. This is a supreme enjoyment and ecstasy. the kind of ecstasy we try to find in sex or in our occupations, so forth. But it can only be found in our true relationship as servants of God.
Well, actually, one who loves God cannot bear the suffering of another creature. Therefore, for one who is practicing fully love of God, there's no question of eating the flesh of slaughtered animals, because he cannot stand the suffering of even an ant. What to say of just ruthlessly killing animals just to satisfy his tongue? That's all. It's only for sense gratification.
I'd like to ask this one thing. What do you do during the day? What do you do for a living?
Okay, now we have many kinds of occupations. Of course, we support the movement also with our incense company, and some of us work there, and some of us are full-time preachers. The thing is that when you're fully engaged in working for God, you'll be provided for. If you're Christians, it's right in the New Testament also. If you're working for God, he will provide for you. You don't have to worry. He's real. Krishna is real. This is not some kind of an abstraction. So if you're working for Krishna, he's not a poor man. He owns everything. If you work for any boss, he will pay your wages and see that you have enough to live on. So that if you're working for God, he will also see that you have enough to live on. There are so many things that can be done. We can work. We have homes. We have families. We have children. We even have our own school in Dallas.
How long have you been in this religion?
Me personally?
Yeah,
8 years.
How many?
8 years.
8 years. And what, were you in any religion before you became into this Hare Krishna movement?
Well, I was raised Jewish.
You were raised Jewish?
Right, but I wasn't
And
following it at the time.
you weren't following. Did you
No.
ever try to get into it like you did
Oh,
Hare
yes,
Krishna?
yes. When I was much younger, yes. I was
Well,
very curious about it.
I don't understand what made you believe in this so much that you would shave your head and paint your face that the same God couldn't offer you as a Jew.
Because nobody was teaching me what was God. And when I met my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, he showed me what was God. So then there was nothing to do but follow him.
But
because it's not the case you follow a religion, but when somebody can show you who is God, then you will not worry about this religion or that religion. Because the goal of all religion is God. Therefore, if you meet a spiritual teacher who can show you what is God and how you can come in contact with him, then you will be satisfied in every respect. And you will not want to look anywhere else. Once you have some idea of what is God, you will be completely satisfied. Your life will be a perfect success.
Why do you need this man to go through God? Can't you go through to yourself? You believe in him, or do you believe?
You cannot go by yourself, because by yourself, if we could go to God by ourselves, we would already be there. But we don't know. We're lost in ignorance now. That's why. Otherwise, we would already be with God.
But how could one man be above all the rest?
Exactly.
Because he is pure, unalloyed devotee of God. That's what
He's just as pure as you are. He may know a little more of knowledge-wise, but he can't know any more spiritual-wise.
Fundamentally, everybody is pure, but we're covered over. But one who has completely devoted his life to God, one who is 100% God conscious, to him, God will give direct knowledge, and he can lead others.
You're telling me that I can't be 100% God conscious without...
You can, but you must have a spirit. You are a Christian. That's taught in your religion also, that you cannot go to God independently.
Mm-hmm.
That's also taught in your religion, that you must go through a teacher. That is who Jesus Christ is.
This program is produced under the auspices of the Religious Radio Television Film Association of Southern California, with the cooperation of the Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles and the Board of Rabbis of Southern California.
Worship teachers.
To receive copies of the sermon, write the producer of the series, Dr. Clifton Moore, 3300 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles 900.